The smell of burnt coffee and grease filled the air as Maria wiped down the same table for the third time. Her eyes felt heavy, like someone had tied weights to her eyelids. The clock on the wall showed 2:47 a.m., and she still had 3 more hours until her shift ended at the truck stop diner. This was her second job of the day. Earlier, she had cleaned offices downtown from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. After that, she picked up her 7-year-old daughter, Lily, from school and helped her with homework before dropping her off at her neighbor's house. Mrs. Chen was kind enough to watch Lily for free, but Maria always felt guilty asking for help. Tomorrow morning, she would start her weekend job at the grocery store. 3 jobs, 7 days a week. It was the only way she could pay rent and keep food on the table since her divorce 2 years ago. The diner was mostly empty except for a few truck drivers having late-night coffee and pie. In the corner booth sat a quiet man in a cowboy hat, reading a newspaper while nursing his 3rd cup of coffee. He had been there for over an hour, and Maria wondered if he was avoiding going home or just killing time on the road. She leaned against the counter for just a moment, telling herself she would rest her eyes for 10 seconds. The warmth from the coffee machine felt good against her back. Her feet ached in her old sneakers and her lower back screamed from bending over tables all night. Just 10 seconds, she told herself. Just 10 seconds to close her eyes. The next thing she knew, a loud crash jolted her awake. She had knocked over a stack of plates while nodding off. The ceramic pieces scattered across the floor like broken promises. Her heart raced as she quickly looked around to see if anyone noticed. Mr. Henderson, the diner owner, emerged from the back office with fire in his eyes. He was a large man with a permanently red face and a voice that could wake the dead. Maria had always been afraid of him, but she needed this job too badly to quit. "What in the world is wrong with you?" he shouted, loud enough for everyone in the diner to hear. "Are you sleeping on my time?" Maria's face burned with shame as every customer turned to stare at her. "I'm sorry, sir. I just lost my balance for a second. I'll clean it up right away." "Lost your balance?" Henderson's voice got louder. "I saw you sleeping, standing up like some kind of zombie. Do you think I'm paying you to take naps?" She knelt down and started picking up the broken pieces, her hands shaking. "Please, Mr. Henderson, I'm really sorry. This won't happen again. I've been working here for 8 months without any problems." 8 months of barely doing your job, he snarled. "I've seen you dragging around here like you don't want to be here." "Well, guess what? Now you don't have to be here anymore." Maria's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "You're fired. Get your things and get out of my diner." The words hit her like a punch to the chest. She looked up at him from the floor, still holding pieces of broken plate. "Please, sir. I need this job. I have a little girl to feed. I promise I'll do better." "Should have thought about that before you decided to take a nap on my dime," Henderson said coldly. "I don't care about your sob story. Everyone's got problems." Maria felt tears starting to form in her eyes, but she fought them back. She wouldn't cry in front of these people. She couldn't give Henderson that satisfaction. "Please," she whispered one more time. "I'll work extra hours. I'll clean the whole place for free." Henderson's face twisted into a cruel smile. "You know what your problem is? You think the world owes you something. Well, it doesn't. Life's hard, and if you can't handle a simple job like this, maybe you should find something more your speed." That's when he did something that shocked everyone in the diner. He raised his hand and slapped her across the face. The sound echoed through the quiet restaurant like a gunshot. Maria's cheek stung and she could taste blood where her teeth had cut her lip. The humiliation hurt worse than the physical pain. She was a grown woman being treated like a disobedient child in front of strangers. "Now get out," Henderson said, pointing toward the door, "and don't expect any reference from me when you go begging for another job." Maria stood up slowly, her legs feeling weak. She could feel everyone staring at her as she walked to the back room to get her purse. Her reflection in the small mirror showed a red handprint on her cheek and tears she couldn't hold back anymore. When she came back out, the diner was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of trucks on the highway. She kept her head down as she walked toward the exit, but she could feel every pair of eyes following her. The cowboy in the corner booth looked up from his newspaper, and she caught a glimpse of his face. He looked angry, but not at her. His jaw was tight and his hands were clenched around his coffee cup like he was trying to control himself. The cold night air hit her face as she pushed through the glass door. October in Montana was already bitter, and she pulled her thin jacket tighter around her shoulders. Her old car sat alone under the buzzing fluorescent lights of the parking lot. She fumbled with her keys, her hands still shaking from what had just happened. When she turned the key in the ignition, nothing happened. She tried again. The engine made a weak clicking sound but wouldn't start. No, 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 she whispered, turning the key again and again. Please not tonight. The car had been giving her trouble for months, but she couldn't afford to fix it. She had been praying it would last just a little longer, just until she could save enough money for repairs. She put her head down on the steering wheel and finally let the tears come. Everything was falling apart at once. No job, no car, rent due in 5 days, and a little girl counting on her to keep their life together. For the first time since her divorce, Maria wondered if she was strong enough to keep fighting. Maybe Henderson was right. Maybe she couldn't handle even a simple job like waiting tables. The sound of footsteps on gravel made her look up. Through her tears, she saw the cowboy from the diner walking toward her car. She quickly wiped her eyes, embarrassed to be caught crying by a stranger. He stopped a few feet away and took off his hat, revealing sandy brown hair and kind eyes. He looked like he was in his 30s, with the weathered face of someone who spent his days outdoors. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "I saw what happened in there. Are you all right?" Maria wasn't sure how to answer. Was she all right? Her face still stung, her car wouldn't start, and she had just lost the job she desperately needed. But she had learned not to trust strangers, especially men who approached her when she was vulnerable. "I'm fine," she lied, not looking at him directly. "Your car won't start?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. "Mind if I take a look?" Something in his voice made her glance up at him. There was no threat in his eyes, no hidden agenda. Just genuine concern from one human being to another, and right now she didn't have many other options. Maria looked at the stranger standing beside her car. In the dim parking lot light, she could see he was tall and lean, with calloused hands that spoke of hard work. His boots were worn but well-maintained, and his jeans had the kind of honest dirt that came from a day's labor, not from trying to look tough. "I don't know much about cars," she admitted, her voice still shaky from crying. "Well, I've had to fix my fair share of broken-down trucks over the years," he said with a small smile. "Mind popping the hood?" Something about his calm manner made her feel a little safer. She reached down and pulled the hood release. He walked around to the front of the car and lifted the hood, pulling out his phone to use as a flashlight. "Name's Ben, by the way," he said while examining the engine. "Ben Rodriguez." "Maria," she replied quietly, staying in the driver's seat with the door cracked open. She wasn't ready to get out and stand next to a man she didn't know, no matter how nice he seemed. "Well, Maria, I think I found your problem," Ben said, pointing to something near the battery. "Looks like your battery cable came loose. Probably been working its way free for a while." He disappeared behind the hood for a moment and she heard some metallic sounds. "Try starting her up now." Maria turned the key and to her amazement the engine roared to life. Relief flooded through her so fast that she almost started crying again. "How did you do that?" she asked, finally stepping out of the car. "Just tighten the connection," Ben said, wiping his hands on an old rag he'd pulled from his pocket. "But you're going to want to get a new battery cable soon. This one's pretty corroded. It'll come loose again." The relief Maria had felt a moment ago faded. A new battery cable meant money she didn't have, especially now that she'd lost her job. "Thank you," she said, meaning it. "I really appreciate your help." Ben studied her face in the parking lot light, and she saw his expression change when he noticed her swollen cheek where Henderson had hit her. "Ma'am, that man in there had no right to put his hands on you," he said, his voice getting quieter but somehow more intense. "What he did was wrong, plain and simple." Maria touched her cheek self-consciously. "It's not a big deal. I should have been more careful about the plates." "No," Ben said firmly. "There's no excuse for a man to hit a woman. I don't care if you had broken every plate in that place." The way he said it reminded Maria of her father, who had always taught her that she deserved to be treated with respect. Her ex-husband had slowly convinced her otherwise, and apparently Henderson thought the same way. "Are you going to be okay getting home?" Ben asked. Maria nodded, though she wasn't sure about anything anymore. "I live about 10 minutes from here." "Listen," Ben said, shifting his weight from one foot to the other like he was nervous about something. "I know this might sound strange, but I heard what that man said to you in there. About needing work." Maria's guard went up immediately. She'd learned to be suspicious when men offered to help her, especially late at night in empty parking lots. "I work at a ranch about 20 miles outside of town. Ben continued, seeming to sense her wariness. Broken Arrow Ranch. The owner is a lady named Mrs. Sterling, and she's been looking for someone to help in the kitchen and with general housekeeping. I don't know, Maria said, taking a small step back toward her car. It's not like that, Ben said quickly, raising his hand slightly. Mrs. Sterling is a good woman. She's been running that ranch since her husband died 15 years ago. She's in her 70s now, and the work is getting too much for her. Maria wanted to believe him, but she'd heard similar stories before. I appreciate the offer, but I don't really know you. Ben nodded like he understood completely. You're smart to be careful. Tell you what, why don't you think about it? If you're interested, you could drive out there tomorrow during the day and meet Mrs. Sterling yourself. See the place, talk to her face to face. He reached into his wallet and pulled out a business card. It was simple white cardstock with Broken Arrow Ranch printed in black letters, along with an address and phone number. This is the ranch's card, not mine, he said, handing it to her. You can call Mrs. Sterling directly if you want. She'll be the one making the hiring decision anyway. Maria took the card and studied it in the light from her phone. It looked legitimate, not like something someone had made up on the spot. Why are you helping me? She asked. You don't even know me. Ben was quiet for a moment, looking out toward the highway where truck lights moved like slow stars in the darkness. I grew up with a single mother, he said finally. My dad left when I was 8 and my mom worked 3 jobs just like you're doing. I watched her struggle for years, watched people treat her badly because they thought she was desperate. He looked back at Maria. One day, when I was about 12, she was working at a diner not much different from this one. Her boss was giving her a hard time, threatening to fire her right before Christmas. A customer stepped in and helped her out, gave her a job at his hardware store. What happened? Maria found herself asking. She worked there for 10 years until I graduated high school and joined the army. That man's kindness changed our whole life. Ben smiled. I guess I figure if someone was willing to help my mom when she needed it, I can do the same for someone else. Maria felt something ease in her chest. This man wasn't trying to take advantage of her. He was just trying to pay forward a kindness someone had shown his family. Mrs. Sterling really needs help? She asked. She really does, and it comes with a place to stay if you need it. There's a small cabin on the property that's been empty for a couple of years. It's not fancy, but it's clean and warm. A place to stay. Maria's heart jumped. She was 3 months behind on rent, and her landlord had been threatening eviction. A job with housing would solve both her biggest problems at once. How do I know this isn't some kind of trick? She asked, though she was starting to hope it wasn't. Ben pulled out his phone and showed her the screen. This is Mrs. Sterling's number. Call her right now if you want. She stays up late watching old movies. Maria stared at the phone number. Everything in her wanted to believe this was real, but everything she'd learned over the past few years told her to be careful. I have a daughter, she said finally. She's 7. Mrs. Sterling loves kids, Ben said without hesitation. She raised 4 of her own on that ranch. There's a good school about 5 miles away, and the school bus stops right at the ranch gate. Maria looked down at the business card again. Could this really be happening? Could one horrible night turn into something good? Think about it, Ben said gently. But don't think too long. Mrs. Sterling mentioned she needs someone to start soon. He started walking back toward the diner, then stopped and turned around. Maria? What that man did to you tonight doesn't define who you are. You seem like a good person who's just had some bad luck. Sometimes good people deserve good things to happen to them. As Ben disappeared back into the diner, Maria sat in her running car and stared at the business card. For the first time in months, she felt something that had been missing from her life. Hope. The next morning, Maria stood in front of her bathroom mirror trying to cover the bruise on her cheek with makeup. Lily was still asleep in the next room, and Maria wanted to keep it that way. Her daughter had enough to worry about without seeing her mother's face looking like this. She'd barely slept all night thinking about Ben's offer. The business card sat on her kitchen table like a lottery ticket she was afraid to scratch. Part of her wanted to drive out to the ranch immediately, but another part worried it was too good to be true. Her phone buzzed with a text from her landlord. Rent was due 3 days ago. Pay by Friday or start packing. Maria's stomach dropped. She had exactly $47 in her checking account and no job. The grocery store wouldn't pay her for last weekend's work until next Tuesday, and that would only be $80. She looked at the business card again, then picked up her phone and dialed the number before she could change her mind. "Hello?" The voice that answered was warm and friendly with a slight southern accent. Hi. Is this Mrs. Sterling?" "Yes, it is." "Who's this, honey?" "My name is Maria Santos. I met one of your workers last night, Ben Rodriguez. He said you might need help at your ranch." There was a pause, then Mrs. Sterling's voice brightened. "Oh, yes. Ben told me he met someone who might be interested in the position. Can you tell me a little about yourself, dear?" For the next 10 minutes, Maria found herself opening up to this stranger on the phone. Mrs. Sterling asked about her work experience, her daughter, and what had happened at the diner. There was something about the older woman's voice that made Maria feel safe. "Well, honey, you sound exactly like what I've been looking for," Mrs. Sterling said. "Why don't you and your little girl come out this afternoon? I'll show you around the place and we can see if it's a good fit for both of us." 2 hours later, Maria and Lily were driving down a long gravel road toward the Broken Arrow Ranch. The morning had been a rush of packing important things into garbage bags, just in case this worked out and they could move quickly. "Where are we going, Mama?" Lily asked from the back seat, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. "We're going to look at a place where we might live and work," Maria explained. "There's a nice lady who needs help and she might let us stay in a little house on her land." "Will I have my own room?" "I don't know yet, sweetheart. We'll have to see." The ranch appeared around a bend in the road like something from a movie. Rolling green fields stretched as far as Maria could see, dotted with horses and cattle. A large white farmhouse sat in the center of it all, with a wraparound porch and flower boxes under every window. An elderly woman came out of the house as they parked. She had silver hair pulled back in a neat bun and wore jeans with a flannel shirt. Despite being in her 70s, she moved with the confidence of someone who'd spent her life working hard. "You must be Maria," she said, extending her hand with a warm smile. "I'm Eleanor Sterling, but you can call me Mrs. Sterling or just Eleanor. Whatever feels right." "Thank you for seeing us on such short notice," Maria said, shaking her hand. Mrs. Sterling's eyes moved to Lily, who was hiding behind Maria's legs. "And this beautiful girl must be Lily." "Hi," Lily whispered, peeking out shyly. "I have some fresh chocolate chip cookies in the kitchen," Mrs. Sterling said, crouching down to Lily's level. "Would you like one while your mama and I talk?" Lily's eyes lit up and she nodded eagerly. The inside of the farmhouse was exactly what Maria had hoped it would be. Comfortable furniture, family photos covering every surface, and the smell of something delicious baking in the oven. It felt like a real home. "Ben told me what happened to you last night," Mrs. Sterling said as they sat at her kitchen table while Lily munched on cookies. "I want you to know that kind of behavior is not tolerated on my ranch. Every person who works here is treated with respect." "Ben seems like a good man," Maria said. "He is. I've known him for 3 years now, and I've never met anyone more honest or hardworking. He's like the son I never had." Mrs. Sterling poured coffee into 2 mugs. "Now let me tell you about the job." The position involved cooking meals for the ranch hands, keeping the main house clean, and helping with general ranch office work like answering phones and organizing paperwork. The pay wasn't huge, but it was steady and it came with housing. "The cabin is about a 1/4 mile from here," Mrs. Sterling explained. "It's small but comfortable. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a little kitchen and living room. My late husband built it for his mother back in the 1980s. Could we see it?" Maria asked, hardly daring to hope. They walked across a field dotted with wildflowers, Lily running ahead to chase butterflies. The cabin sat under a grove of old oak trees painted white with green shutters. It looked like something from a fairy tale. Inside, the cabin was simple but clean. The furniture was older but well-maintained. The bedrooms were small but cozy, and the kitchen had everything they would need. "The best part," Mrs. Sterling said, opening the back door, "is the view." Behind the cabin, the land sloped down toward a creek that sparkled in the afternoon sun. Mountains rose in the distance, and the whole scene looked like a postcard. "Mama, look," Lily called from the creek bank. "There are fish." "Can she play here safely?" Maria asked. "Absolutely. The creek is shallow and we don't have any dangerous animals on this part of the property. I raised 4 children here, and they spent half their time playing in that creek." As they walked back toward the main house, Maria felt something she hadn't experienced in years: peace. For the first time since her divorce, she could imagine a place where Lily could be happy and safe. "Mrs. Sterling," she said carefully, "I need to be honest with you. I'm behind on my rent and I don't have money for a security deposit or anything like that. The older woman waved her hand dismissively. Honey, I need help more than I need deposits. If you want the job, you can start Monday. You can move into the cabin whenever you're ready. Maria felt tears starting to form. Just like that? Just like that. But I do have one condition. Maria's heart sank. Here it comes, she thought. The catch. What's the condition? Mrs. Sterling smiled. I expect you and Lily to join me for Sunday dinner every week. I don't get to cook for young people very often anymore, and I miss it. That evening, as they drove back to town to pack their belongings, Lily fell asleep in the back seat with a smile on her face. She'd spent the afternoon playing with the ranch cats and helping Mrs. Sterling feed the chickens. Maria's phone rang as she pulled into their apartment complex. It was Ben. Mrs. Sterling called me, he said. She's over the moon about hiring you, said Lily, reminded her of her own granddaughter. I can't believe this is really happening, Maria admitted. Sometimes good things happen to good people, Ben said. You deserve this, Maria. You and Lily both. As Maria looked up at the apartment where they'd been struggling for 2 years, she felt like she was finally waking up from a bad dream. Tomorrow they would start a new life at the Broken Arrow Ranch. For the first time in a long time, Maria went to bed feeling hopeful about the future. 3 weeks had passed since Maria and Lily moved to the Broken Arrow Ranch, and it felt like stepping into a completely different world. Every morning, Maria woke up to the sound of birds singing instead of traffic and sirens. Lily had already made friends with the ranch cats and could name every horse in the pasture. Mama, can I help Ben with the horses today? Lily asked over breakfast, her face covered in pancake syrup. Maria hesitated, like she always did when it came to Ben. He'd been nothing but kind to them since they arrived, but she couldn't shake the feeling that he was too good to be true. In her experience, men who seemed perfect always had something to hide. We'll see, sweetheart. You have school today, remember? The school bus stopped right at the ranch gate, just like Ben had promised. Lily loved her new school and had already made 2 best friends. Her teacher, Miss Rodriguez, said she was settling in beautifully and seemed much happier than when she'd started. After Lily left for school, Maria began her daily routine. First, she prepared lunch for the ranch hands who would come in hungry and dusty around noon. Then she cleaned Mrs. Sterling's house, which was always spotless but somehow still needed daily attention. Around 10 o'clock, Ben usually stopped by the kitchen for coffee. It had become an unofficial tradition, though Maria still felt nervous every time she heard his boots on the porch steps. Morning, Maria, he said, hanging his hat on the hook by the door. Coffee smells good. It's fresh, she replied, not looking up from the vegetables she was chopping for lunch. Ben poured himself a cup and leaned against the counter. Mrs. Sterling mentioned that Lily's been asking about learning to ride. I could teach her if you're okay with it. Maria's knife stopped moving. This was exactly what she'd been afraid of. Ben was getting too involved in their lives, too close to Lily. I don't think that's a good idea, she said quietly. Can I ask why? Maria finally looked up at him. Ben's face showed genuine confusion, not anger or frustration like her ex-husband would have shown. Lily gets attached to people easily, Maria said carefully, and then when they leave, it breaks her heart. Who says I'm leaving? The question hung in the air between them. Maria realized she'd been waiting for Ben to leave since the day they met. She'd been waiting for him to show his true colors, to lose his temper, to make demands, to become someone different than the gentle man he appeared to be. Everyone leaves eventually, she said, going back to her chopping. Ben was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. Not everyone, Maria. Some people stick around. That afternoon, while Lily played in the creek behind their cabin, Maria sat on the porch steps thinking about what Ben had said. Mrs. Sterling found her there when she came for her daily visit. You look like you've got something heavy on your mind, the older woman said, settling beside her on the steps. Can I ask you something personal? Maria said. Honey, at my age, everything's personal. Ask away. How do you know when you can trust someone? Mrs. Sterling smiled. You're thinking about Ben. It wasn't a question, so Maria didn't answer. I've known a lot of men in my 74 years, Mrs. Sterling continued. Good ones and bad ones. The bad ones try to prove how good they are with big gestures and fancy words. The good ones just show up every day and do what they say they'll do. What if I'm wrong about him? What if I let him get close to Lily and he hurts her? What if you don't let him get close and you miss out on something wonderful? That evening, Ben knocked on their cabin door. Through the window, Maria could see him holding something in his hands. What's that? Lily asked, pressing her face against the glass. Maria opened the door reluctantly. Ben stood on their porch holding a small wooden box with holes drilled in the lid. I found something I thought Lily might like to see, he said. Lily bounced on her toes. What is it? Ben sat down on the porch steps and carefully opened the box. Inside was a tiny kitten, no bigger than Maria's fist, with orange and white fur. I found her by the barn this morning, Ben explained. Her mama's gone and she's too little to take care of herself. Lily gasped and immediately sat down next to Ben. Can I touch her? Very gently, Ben said, showing Lily how to pet the kitten's tiny head with one finger. Maria watched from the doorway as Ben patiently answered all of Lily's questions about the kitten. He explained how to feed her with a tiny bottle, how often she needed to eat, and how to keep her warm. She needs someone to take care of her every few hours, Ben said. It's a big responsibility. I can do it, Lily said seriously. I'll be the best kitten mama ever. Ben looked up at Maria. Only if your mama says it's okay. Maria found herself nodding before she could think about it. The joy on Lily's face was worth any extra work a kitten might bring. What should we name her? Lily asked. That's up to you, Ben said. What do you think fits her? Lily studied the tiny orange ball of fur. Buttercup. Because she's the color of butter and she's small like a cup. Buttercup it is, Ben said with a grin. As the weeks passed, Maria found herself looking forward to Ben's daily coffee visits. He never stayed too long or made her feel uncomfortable. He just talked about the ranch, asked about Lily's school day, and somehow made Maria laugh without even trying. One evening, while Maria was washing dishes, she looked out the kitchen window and saw Ben teaching Lily to throw a rope at a fence post. He was patient with her, showing her the same motion over and over until she got it right. When Lily finally managed to get the rope around the post, Ben cheered like she'd won the Olympics. That man's got a good heart, Mrs. Sterling said, appearing beside Maria at the window. I know, Maria admitted. That's what scares me. Honey, I've been watching you for weeks now. You're waiting for the other shoe to drop, aren't you? Maria nodded, not trusting her voice. Your ex-husband really did a number on you, didn't he? Tears started forming in Maria's eyes. She'd never told Mrs. Sterling the whole story about her marriage, but somehow the older woman knew. He convinced me that I was lucky anyone would want me, Maria whispered. That I was difficult and needy and no good man would ever put up with me. Mrs. Sterling put her arm around Maria's shoulders. That man was a liar and a fool. You're a wonderful mother, a hard worker, and a kind person. Any man would be lucky to have you in his life. Through the window, they watched Ben show Lily how to coil the rope properly. When she did it right, he high-fived her tiny hand with his big calloused one. Ben's not your ex-husband, Mrs. Sterling said gently. He's not going to hurt you or Lily. Some people really are just good, honey, and you deserve good people in your life. That night, as Maria tucked Lily into bed, her daughter looked up at her with serious eyes. Mama, do you think Ben likes us? What do you mean, sweetheart? I mean, do you think he wants to be our friend for real? Not just because Mrs. Sterling told him to be nice to us? Maria's heart ached. Even at 7 years old, Lily had learned to question people's motives. I think Ben really does like us, Maria said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. Good, Lily said, snuggling down with Buttercup purring on her pillow. Because I like him too. He makes you smile, Mama. You didn't smile much before we came here. As Maria turned off the light, she realized Lily was right. She had been smiling more lately. And maybe, just maybe, that wasn't something to be afraid of. Maria was hanging laundry on the line behind their cabin when she heard a car coming up the gravel road. It was Tuesday afternoon and no deliveries were expected. She shaded her eyes against the sun and watched as a black sedan pulled up to the main house. A man in an expensive suit got out, followed by Henderson from the diner. Maria's blood ran cold. She quickly gathered the wet clothes and hurried inside, her heart pounding. From her kitchen window, she could see the two men talking to Mrs. Sterling on the front porch. Whatever they were saying, Mrs. Sterling didn't look happy about it. Her arms were crossed and she was shaking her head firmly. 20 minutes later, Mrs. Sterling knocked on Maria's door. Her face was flushed with anger. Honey, we need to talk, she said, settling into one of the kitchen chairs. I just had a very unpleasant visit from that diner owner and some lawyer from town. Maria's hands started shaking as she poured coffee. What did they want? They're spreading lies about you, dear, saying you stole money from the diner, that you're unstable, that kind of nonsense. The lawyer was asking questions about Lily, about whether you're fit to take care of her. The coffee cup slipped from Maria's hands and shattered on the floor. What? Mrs. Sterling quickly helped her clean up the mess. Now don't you worry. I told them exactly what I thought of their lies. But Maria, honey, is there something you haven't told me? Is someone trying to cause trouble for you? Maria sank into a chair, her legs feeling weak. My ex-husband, David, he must have found out where we are. Tell me about him. The words came out in a rush. Maria told Mrs. Sterling about the years of David's control, the verbal abuse that slowly became physical, the way he'd threatened to take Lily away if Maria ever tried to leave him, how she'd finally escaped one night when he was drunk, taking only what they could carry. He swore he'd find us, Maria whispered. He said no court would ever give custody to a woman who couldn't even keep a job. Mrs. Sterling's face grew hard. That man is a bully and a coward. But honey, you're not the same person who ran away in the middle of the night. You have a job, a home, people who care about you. But what if he's right? What if a judge thinks I'm not good enough to raise Lily? Before Mrs. Sterling could answer, they heard the sound of the school bus at the front gate. Lily would be home any minute, full of stories about her day. Maria couldn't let her daughter see how scared she was. We'll figure this out, Mrs. Sterling said firmly. You're not alone in this fight. That evening, after Lily was asleep, Maria sat on her porch steps staring at the stars. She'd been so happy here, so hopeful about the future. Now it felt like it was all slipping away. She heard footsteps in the grass and looked up to see Ben walking toward the cabin. Even in the darkness, she could tell he was upset about something. Mrs. Sterling told me what happened today, he said, sitting down beside her. I'm sorry. It's not your fault, Maria said quietly. Those men came by the barn too, asking the other workers questions about you. Trying to dig up dirt, Maria's heart sank. What did they say? Nothing good about you, that's for sure. But Carlos told them you were the hardest working person he'd ever met. Jake said his wife has never been happier with the meals you cook for us. And old Pete told them if they had a problem with you, they had a problem with all of us. Despite everything, Maria felt a warm feeling in her chest. These men barely knew her, but they were willing to defend her. Ben, what if David really tries to take Lily? What if he wins? Ben was quiet for a long moment. Can I tell you something my grandmother used to say? Maria nodded. She used to tell me that courage isn't about not being scared. It's about doing what's right even when you are scared. He looked at her in the moonlight. You're one of the bravest people I know, Maria. You left a bad situation to protect your daughter. You work hard every day to give her a better life. Any judge would see that. But what if they don't? Then we'll make sure they do. The word "we" hung in the air between them. Maria realized that for the first time in years she didn't feel completely alone in facing her problems. 2 days later, a sheriff's deputy came to the ranch with official papers. Maria was being sued for custody of Lily. David claimed she was an unfit mother who couldn't provide a stable home for their daughter. Mrs. Sterling called her lawyer immediately. Patricia Wilson was a sharp woman in her 50s who specialized in family law. She came to the ranch that same afternoon to meet with Maria. I won't lie to you, Patricia said after reviewing the papers. Your ex-husband has money and a good lawyer. But he's making some big mistakes. Like what? He's claiming you can't hold down a job, but you've been employed here for 2 months with excellent references. He's saying you move around too much and can't provide stability, but you have a permanent address and Lily is enrolled in school. Patricia made notes as she talked. Most importantly, he's claiming you abandoned him, but I'm betting we can prove he was abusive. Do you have any medical records from when you were married? Photos of injuries? Maria shook her head. I was too scared to go to the doctor, and he never hit me where it would show. That's okay. We'll work with what we have. I want to talk to Lily's teacher, her doctor here in town, Mrs. Sterling, and anyone else who can speak to your character as a mother. Over the next week, the ranch became like a fortress. Ben made sure someone was always watching the road. Mrs. Sterling had the locks changed on all the buildings. The other ranch hands took turns checking on Maria and Lily. I feel like I'm putting everyone in danger, Maria told Ben one evening as they watched Lily play with Buttercup in the yard. You're not putting anyone in danger. You're letting people who care about you help protect what matters. Why do you care so much? The question slipped out before Maria could stop it. Ben looked at her for a long moment. Because you and Lily have become important to me. Because I've watched you work harder than anyone should have to work, and you deserve to be happy. Because that little girl deserves to stay with the mother who loves her. He paused, then added quietly, and because I can't stand the thought of you being hurt again. That night, Maria lay awake thinking about what Ben had said. Somewhere along the way, without her even realizing it, Ben had become more than just a kind stranger who helped them. He'd become someone she could count on, someone who made her feel safe. But the fear was still there, cold and heavy in her chest. David was coming for Lily, and he had money and lawyers and a system that often favored fathers over mothers. Maria got up and checked on Lily, who was sleeping peacefully with Buttercup curled up beside her. Her daughter looked so small and innocent in the moonlight streaming through the window. I won't let him take you, Maria whispered. I'll fight as hard as I have to fight. Outside, she could see Ben's truck parked near the barn. He'd been staying later every night, making sure they were safe before he went home to his own small house on the other side of the ranch. For the first time since receiving those papers, Maria felt a spark of hope. She wasn't the scared, isolated woman who had run away in the middle of the night 2 years ago. She had people on her side now, people who believed in her. David might have money and lawyers, but Maria had something he'd never had. People who truly cared about what was best for Lily. The fight was just beginning, but Maria was ready. The courthouse steps felt cold under Maria's feet as she walked up them with Patricia, her lawyer. Today was the first hearing in the custody case, and her stomach was twisted in knots. She'd barely slept for 3 nights, going over every possible question the judge might ask. Ben had offered to come with her, but Maria felt she needed to face this first part alone. This was her fight, her responsibility as Lily's mother. Inside the courtroom, David sat at a table with his expensive lawyer. He looked exactly the same as he had 2 years ago. Perfectly groomed, confident, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Maria made in 2 months. When he saw her walk in, he smiled that cold smile she remembered so well. Don't let him intimidate you, Patricia whispered. Remember, you're not the same woman who left him. You're stronger now. The hearing lasted 2 hours. David's lawyer painted a picture of Maria as an unstable woman who couldn't hold a job, who moved from place to place, dragging her daughter along. He brought up the incident at the diner, twisting it to make it sound like Maria had been fired for stealing. When it was Patricia's turn, she presented a completely different story. Letters from Lily's teacher saying she was happier and doing better in school than ever before. A statement from the family doctor saying Lily was healthy and well cared for. Character references from Mrs. Sterling and several ranch workers. Your Honor, Patricia said, this is not a case of an unfit mother. This is a case of a woman who escaped an abusive marriage and built a stable, loving home for her daughter. Mr. Garcia abandoned his family financially and emotionally long before Mrs. Santos found the courage to leave. The judge, a stern-looking woman in her 60s, listened to everything without showing much emotion. At the end, she announced that a social worker would visit the ranch to evaluate Lily's living situation before making any decisions. Outside the courthouse, David approached Maria while Patricia was talking to another lawyer. You can't win this, you know, he said quietly so only she could hear. I have money, connections, a good reputation in this town. You have what? A job cooking for Cowboys? Maria looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in 2 years. She realized he seemed smaller than she remembered, less frightening. I have something you never had, she said calmly. People who actually care about what's best for Lily. David's face darkened. Don't get smart with me. You remember what happens when you get smart. Before Maria could respond, Ben appeared beside her. She hadn't even seen him approach. Is there a problem here? Ben asked, his voice perfectly polite but with an edge that made David take a step back. And you are? David demanded. A friend, Ben said simply. Maria, you ready to go home? The word home hit David like a slap. His face twisted with anger. But he was smart enough not to cause a scene in front of the courthouse with lawyers and police officers around. This isn't over, he told Maria before walking away. I know, she replied, but for the first time she wasn't afraid of him. On the drive back to the ranch, Ben asked how the hearing went. Better than I expected, Maria admitted. The judge didn't seem impressed with David's lawyer. And Patricia was amazing. What happens next? A social worker comes to evaluate how Lily's doing. If she reports good things, we have a real chance of winning. That evening, Mrs. Sterling called a meeting in her living room. All the ranch workers were there. Carlos, Jake, Pete, and 3 others. They sat around like a family planning for a crisis. The social worker will be here Thursday, Mrs. Sterling announced. I want everyone to know what to say if she asks questions. We just tell the truth, Carlos said. Maria's the best worker we've had here in years, and that little girl is happy as can be. What about the ex-husband? Jake asked. Think he'll try anything else? Ben's jaw tightened. I've been thinking about that. He struck me as the type who doesn't like to lose. He was right. The next morning, Maria woke up to find her car had been vandalized. Someone had slashed all 4 tires and scratched deep gouges in the paint. Worse, they'd left a note under the windshield wiper. Take the kid and leave town, or things will get worse. Ben found her standing beside the car, holding the note with shaking hands. This is my fault, she said. David's trying to scare me into running away again. Then he doesn't know you very well, Ben said, taking the note. Because the Maria I know doesn't run from fights anymore. He was right. The old Maria would have packed up and disappeared in the middle of the night. But this Maria had people depending on her, people who believed in her. She wasn't going to let David win. Sheriff Morrison came out to take a report about the vandalism. He was a friend of Ben's family and had known Mrs. Sterling for decades. This kind of intimidation doesn't sit well with me, he told them. I'll have deputies drive by here more often, and I'll have a talk with Mr. Garcia about staying away from ranch property. Will that be enough? Maria asked. Depends on how smart he is, the sheriff replied. But most bullies back down when they realize they're being watched. The social worker, Ms. Chen, arrived Thursday afternoon as promised. She was a kind woman in her 40s who seemed genuinely interested in Lily's welfare, rather than just checking boxes on a form. She spent an hour touring the cabin, looking at Lily's bedroom with its drawings taped to the walls and her books neatly arranged on shelves. She watched through the window as Ben taught Lily to brush her horse, noting how patient he was and how comfortable Lily seemed with him. Tell me about your daily routine, Ms. Chen asked Maria as they sat at the kitchen table. Maria walked her through a typical day, getting Lily ready for school, working in the main house kitchen, picking Lily up from the bus, helping with homework, making dinner together. It was a simple life, but it was stable and full of love. And the other people here? How do they interact with Lily? Like she's their own niece, Maria said honestly. Mrs. Sterling bakes cookies with her every Sunday. Carlos teaches her Spanish while they feed the chickens. Jake's wife invited her to their daughter's birthday party next week. Ms. Chen made notes throughout the conversation. Then she asked to speak with Lily alone. Maria waited outside, nervous about what her daughter might say. But when they finished talking, both Lily and Ms. Chen were smiling. Your daughter is very articulate for her age, Ms. Chen told Maria. She speaks about you with obvious love and respect. She also seems very happy here. What did she tell you? That she likes her new school, that she has friends, that Ben is teaching her to ride horses, and that you read together every night before bed. Ms. Chen packed up her papers. She also said this is the first place that's ever felt like home. 2 weeks later, Patricia called with news from the courthouse. The social worker's report was excellent, she said. She recommended that Lily remain in your custody. The judge agreed. The case is closed, Maria. You won. Maria sank into a chair, hardly believing it was real. What about David? Can he appeal? He can try, but with this report and the evidence we presented, it would be very difficult. I think he'll give up and move on to making some other poor woman's life miserable. That evening, the whole ranch celebrated. Mrs. Sterling made a huge dinner, and everyone gathered in the main house dining room. Lily sat between Maria and Ben, chattering excitedly about her horse riding lessons and her new friend at school. I want to thank all of you, Maria said when Mrs. Sterling asked her to say a few words. 6 months ago, I was sleeping in my car and didn't know where our next meal was coming from. You all gave us more than just jobs and a place to live. You gave us a family. Later, as Maria tucked Lily into bed, her daughter looked up at her with serious eyes. Mama, are we going to stay here forever? Do you want to stay here forever? Yes, I like it here. I like Mrs. Sterling and Ben and Carlos and everyone. And I like that you're not sad anymore. Maria kissed her daughter's forehead. Then we'll stay as long as they'll have us. As she turned off the light, Maria realized something had changed inside her. The constant fear that had lived in her chest for years was finally gone. She'd faced David in court and won. She'd stood up for herself and her daughter, and she'd discovered she was stronger than she'd ever imagined. Outside her window, she could see Ben checking on the horses one last time before heading home. Tomorrow, she thought, she might finally tell him how much his friendship meant to her. Tonight, she would sleep peacefully for the first time in years. Spring had arrived at the Broken Arrow Ranch, and with it came a sense of new beginnings. Maria had been there for almost 8 months now, and life had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Lily was thriving in school, Buttercup had grown into a healthy young cat, and Maria felt more confident than she had in years. She was hanging sheets on the clothesline behind their cabin when she noticed Ben's truck wasn't in its usual spot by the barn. It was strange, he never missed the morning feeding without telling someone where he was going. "Mrs. Sterling, have you seen Ben today?" Maria asked when she went to the main house to start lunch preparation. The older woman looked up from her crossword puzzle with an odd expression. "He had to drive into town for some business. Said he might be late getting back." Something in Mrs. Sterling's tone made Maria pause. "Is everything okay?" "Oh, I'm sure it's fine, dear. Just some paperwork to take care of." But Mrs. Sterling wouldn't meet her eyes, and Maria had learned to read the older woman's moods pretty well. Something was definitely going on. That afternoon, Ben still hadn't returned. Carlos mentioned that he'd seen Ben loading a suitcase into his truck early that morning, which made Maria's stomach twist with worry. Why would Ben need a suitcase for business in town? When Lily got off the school bus, her first question was about Ben. "Where's Ben, Mama?" "He promised to help me practice my rope throwing today. He had to go to town, sweetheart. I'm sure he'll be back soon." But Maria wasn't sure at all. A cold fear was growing in her chest, the same feeling she'd had when David used to disappear for days without explanation. That evening, Mrs. Sterling invited them for dinner at the main house. As they sat around the kitchen table, Lily chattering about her day at school, Maria noticed that Mrs. Sterling kept glancing toward the window. "Mrs. Sterling, what's really going on with Ben?" The older woman set down her fork and sighed. "He got a job offer, honey. A good one. Managing a ranch down in Texas. 3 times what I can pay him here." Maria felt like the air had been knocked out of her lungs. "When?" "The offer came last week. He's been thinking about it ever since." Mrs. Sterling reached across and squeezed Maria's hand. "He doesn't want to leave, but it's a real opportunity for him. A chance to have his own place someday." "Of course he should take it," Maria said quickly, though her voice sounded hollow to her own ears. "It's a great opportunity." "Mama, Ben's not leaving, is he?" Lily asked, her eyes wide with worry. "We don't know yet, sweetheart," Maria said, forcing a smile. "But if he does, we'll be happy for him." That night, after Lily was asleep, Maria sat on her porch steps staring at the empty spot where Ben's truck usually parked. She realized with painful clarity that somewhere along the way, she'd started depending on Ben being there, not just for help with ranch work or protection from David, but for the way he made her laugh, the way he listened when she talked about her dreams for Lily's future, the way he made their little cabin feel like home. She'd been so careful not to fall in love that she hadn't noticed it happening anyway. The next morning, Ben's truck was back. Maria saw him through her kitchen window talking to Carlos by the barn. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept much. An hour later, he knocked on her door. "Can we talk?" he asked. They walked to the creek behind the cabin, the same place where Lily loved to play. The water sparkled in the morning sun and birds sang in the trees overhead. It was beautiful and peaceful, but Maria felt like a storm was brewing in her chest. "Mrs. Sterling told you about the job," Ben said. "It wasn't a question. She did. Congratulations, it sounds like an amazing opportunity." Ben picked up a stone and skipped it across the water. "It is. The ranch is 5 times bigger than this one. I'd be managing 50 head of cattle, a dozen horses. The pay is enough that I could save up to buy my own place in a few years." "That's wonderful, Ben. You deserve something like that." "Do I?" Maria looked at him, confused by the question. "Of course you do. You work harder than anyone I know." "The thing is," Ben said, throwing another stone, "I keep thinking about what I'd be leaving behind." Maria's heart started beating faster. "The ranch will miss you. Mrs. Sterling thinks of you like a son." "What about you, Maria? Will you miss me?" The question hung between them like a bridge she was afraid to cross. For months, she'd been building walls around her heart, telling herself that Ben was just a friend, just someone who'd help them when they needed it. "Yes," she whispered. "I'll miss you." Ben turned to face her fully. "How much?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, would you miss me enough to tell me not to go?" Maria stared at him, hardly believing what she was hearing. "Ben, I can't ask you to give up your dreams for us. What if you're part of my dreams?" The words hit her like lightning. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. "I've been driving around for 2 days thinking about this job," Ben continued, "trying to convince myself to take it. And you know what kept stopping me?" Maria shook her head. "The thought of not seeing you make coffee every morning, not hearing Lily tell me about her day at school, not watching you become more confident and happy every day." He stepped closer. "The thought of not being here if you ever needed me again." "Ben, I know this is crazy," he said quickly. "I know you've been hurt, and I know you're not ready to trust another man. But I had to tell you how I feel before I made this decision." Maria felt tears starting to form. "How do you feel?" "Like I'm falling in love with you. Like I have been for months. Like the thought of leaving you and Lily feels like tearing my heart out." The words she'd been afraid to even think, let alone say out loud, tumbled out before she could stop them. "Then don't go." Ben's eyes widened. "What? Don't go to Texas, stay here. Stay with us." Maria took a shaky breath. "Because I think I'm falling in love with you too, and I'm terrified. But I'm more terrified of losing you." Before she could say anything else, Ben stepped forward and cupped her face in his hands. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure that I've never felt as safe with anyone as I do with you. I'm sure that Lily lights up when you walk into a room. I'm sure that when I think about the future, I can't imagine it without you in it." Ben leaned down and kissed her, soft and gentle and full of promise. It was Maria's first kiss in years that didn't come with fear or obligation. It came with hope. When they broke apart, they were both smiling. "So you're staying?" Maria asked. "I'm staying. Mrs. Sterling's been wanting to give me more responsibility around here anyway, and Texas has plenty of ranches, but it only has one you." That evening, they told Lily together. She whooped with joy and threw her arms around Ben's neck. "Does this mean you're going to marry my mama?" she asked with the bluntness that only 7-year-old children possessed. Ben and Maria looked at each other and started laughing. "Maybe someday," Ben said. "If your mama will have me." "She will," Lily said confidently. "She smiles different when you're around." Later that night, after Lily was asleep, Maria and Ben sat on the porch steps talking about their future. For the first time in her adult life, Maria felt truly optimistic about what lay ahead. "Are you really okay with giving up that job?" she asked. "Maria, I spent years thinking success meant having the biggest ranch or making the most money. But these past few months, I realized success is waking up excited about your life. It's having people who matter to you and knowing you matter to them." He took her hand. "You and Lily gave me something I didn't even know I was looking for. A real home. A real family. That's worth more than any job in Texas." As they sat together under the Montana stars, Maria realized that her life had become something she'd never dared to dream of. She had work she enjoyed, a home she loved, and a man who chose her not because he needed something from her, but because he genuinely wanted to build a life with her. The scared, broken woman who had stumbled out of that diner 8 months ago was gone. In her place was someone stronger, someone worthy of love, someone ready for whatever came next. 1 year later, Maria stood in front of the mirror in Mrs. Sterling's bedroom, smoothing down the simple white dress she'd bought in town. It wasn't fancy or expensive, but it was perfect for a ranch wedding. The dress had 3/4 sleeves and fell just below her knees, with tiny pearl buttons down the back. "You look beautiful." "Honey?" Mrs. Sterling said, fastening a string of pearls around Maria's neck. "These belong to my mother. Something borrowed for good luck." "I can't believe this is really happening," Maria said, touching the pearls gently. "Believe it. That man loves you more than the sun loves the sky, and you deserve every bit of happiness coming your way." Through the bedroom window, Maria could see guests gathering in the backyard. Ranch hands in their best shirts and cleanest jeans mixed with townsfolk who had become friends over the past year. Lily's teacher was there along with the sheriff and even Patricia, the lawyer who had helped her win the custody battle. "Mama." Lily burst through the door wearing a pale yellow dress with a crown of wildflowers in her hair. "Ben's here. And he looks really nervous." Mrs. Sterling laughed. That's normal, sweetheart. Most grooms get nervous on their wedding day. Why? Because getting married is a big, important thing. It means promising to take care of someone forever and ever. Lily considered this seriously. Ben's already been taking care of us forever and ever. Now it's just official, right? Exactly right, Maria said, kneeling down to hug her daughter. Are you ready to be my maid of honor? I've been ready since you said yes. The ceremony was planned for 5 o'clock, when the Montana sun would be perfect for pictures. Maria had wanted something simple and meaningful, not the big expensive wedding she'd never had the first time around. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Come in, Mrs. Sterling called. Carlos peeked his head in. Sorry to bother you, but Ben wanted me to give this to Maria. He handed her a small wrapped box with a note attached. In Ben's careful handwriting it said, "For the woman who taught me what home really means." Inside the box was a delicate silver bracelet with a small horse charm. Maria's eyes filled with tears as she fastened it around her wrist. What's it say? Lily asked, trying to read the note. It says Ben loves us very much, Maria replied, not trusting her voice with the actual words. At 5 o'clock sharp, Maria walked through Mrs. Sterling's back door and onto the porch that had been decorated with white ribbons and wildflowers. Jake had borrowed a guitar from somewhere and was playing a soft tune as she made her way down the steps. Ben stood under an archway that Pete had built from branches cut fresh that morning. He wore his best jeans, polished boots, and a white shirt that made his eyes look even bluer than usual. When he saw Maria, his face lit up with a smile that could have powered the whole ranch. Lily walked ahead of her, carefully scattering flower petals from a small basket. She took her job very seriously, making sure each petal landed in exactly the right spot. As Maria walked toward Ben, she thought about the journey that had brought them here. A year and a half ago, she'd been sleeping standing up in a diner afraid of her own shadow. Now she was walking toward a man who loved her exactly as she was. In front of people who had become her chosen family. You look incredible, Ben whispered when she reached him. So do you, she whispered back. Pastor Williams from the local church had agreed to perform the ceremony. He was a kind man in his 60s who had married dozens of couples over the years. But he said he'd never seen two people more clearly meant for each other. Dearly beloved, he began, and Maria felt Ben take her hand. The vows they'd written were simple but heartfelt. Ben promised to be her partner in all things, to support her dreams, and to love Lily as his own daughter. Maria promised to trust him with her heart, to build a future together and to never forget how lucky they were to find each other. Do you have rings? Pastor Williams asked. Ben reached into his pocket and pulled out 2 simple gold bands. They weren't expensive, but they were theirs. Maria, Ben said, slipping the ring onto her finger. With this ring, I promise you'll never have to face anything alone again. You're safe forever now. The words were almost the same ones he'd said to her that night in the diner parking lot, but now they carried the weight of a year's worth of proof. Ben, Maria said, placing his ring on his finger. With this ring, I promise to love you not just for who you are, but for who you've helped me become. Thank you for showing me that good men really do exist. You may kiss the bride, Pastor Williams announced. Ben cupped Maria's face in his hands and kissed her while their friends and chosen family cheered. Lily clapped the loudest of anyone. The reception was held right there in the backyard with tables made from sawhorses and plywood covered in Mrs. Sterling's best tablecloths. Carlos had strung lights between the trees, and Jake's wife had made a beautiful 3-layer cake. As the sun began to set, Ben stood up to make a speech. Most of you know that Maria and I didn't meet in the most romantic way, he said, earning some chuckles. But sometimes the best things come from the worst moments. He looked at Maria. A year and a half ago, I met a woman who was working herself to exhaustion to take care of her daughter. She was scared and alone, but she never stopped fighting for what mattered most to her. Ben's voice got quieter. Maria taught me that real strength isn't about how much you can lift or how tough you can be. Real strength is getting up every day and choosing love over fear, hope over despair. He raised his glass of punch. So here's to my wife, who is the strongest person I know. And to Lily, who makes every day brighter. And to all of you who prove that family isn't just about blood. It's about people who show up for each other when it matters. Everyone raised their glasses and cheered. Later, as the party wound down and guests began to leave, Maria found herself sitting on the porch steps with Mrs. Sterling, watching Ben teach a group of kids how to rope fence posts. Any regrets? The older woman asked. Maria thought about it seriously. You know what's funny? I used to think my life started going wrong when I married David. But now I think everything that happened had to happen exactly the way it did to bring me here. Even the bad parts? Especially the bad parts. If I hadn't gone through all that, I never would have appreciated what I have now. I never would have known how rare it is to find someone who makes you feel safe instead of scared. Mrs. Sterling patted her hand. You've got wisdom beyond your years, honey. I've got you to thank for a lot of that wisdom. As the last guests left and the dishes were cleared away, Maria, Ben, and Lily walked back to their cabin. It was the same little house Maria had seen that first day, but now it truly felt like home. Can I stay up late since it's your wedding day? Lily asked hopefully. Nice try, Maria laughed. But tomorrow's a school day. As they tucked Lily into bed, she looked up at them with sleepy eyes. Are we going to live happily ever after now? Ben sat on the edge of her bed. I think we're already living happily ever after, sweetheart. This is just the beginning of a new chapter. Good, Lily said, yawning. I like our story. Later, sitting on their porch under the stars, Maria rested her head on Ben's shoulder and listened to the peaceful sounds of the ranch at night. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For seeing something in me that I couldn't see in myself. For never giving up on us. For showing me that safe forever isn't just words. Ben kissed the top of her head. Thank you for letting me be part of your story. As they sat together in comfortable silence, Maria realized that the scared woman who had cried in a parking lot was gone forever. In her place was someone who knew her own worth, who had found her home and who was ready for whatever adventures lay ahead. She was finally, truly, safe forever now.